Obviously, thank you to President Macron and the Prime Minister for this initiative, an initiative that I consider extremely important, and which is the reason why I wanted to be here personally. Clearly, freedom of navigation in the Strait of Hormuz is an absolutely central issue for our nation, for Italy, for Europe, and for the international community as a whole. It is obviously a matter of affirming a cardinal principle of international law, a principle that applies to Hormuz and clearly to any other passage on which global supply chains depend. But it is obviously also a matter of enormous economic significance. Through the Strait of Hormuz, as is known, transits about 20% of the world's consumption of oil and liquefied natural gas. Not only that, fertilizers are often mentioned, another fundamental issue on which the food security of millions of people depends, especially in the most fragile contexts. I am also thinking of imports into the Gulf nations, which are strategic partners of Italy and Europe, which see 60% of their food consumption pass through Hormuz, and therefore it is easy to understand how reopening Hormuz means addressing these critical issues. But it also means building an element that is essential for any solution to the Middle Eastern conflict. And this can clearly be seen right now, that is, the centrality of the issue of reopening Hormuz in the negotiation process is particularly clear based on the developments of these hours, when, as Macron recalled in response to the ceasefire in Lebanon, the passage of ships in the strait was reopened, at least on the Iranian side, for the period of the ceasefire that was negotiated between the United States, Iran, and Israel. And therefore, as I was saying, the reopening of Hormuz is part of any serious negotiation project for the crisis in the Middle East. Clearly, it is not the only one. We know that the issue of Iran abandoning the nuclear race, as well as building a security framework in which no nation is threatened in the future, will be the other fundamental elements. But it is the reason why we are all here today. We all understand the magnitude of this challenge. I also consider it very significant, and I obviously want to thank Emmanuel, but also the many nations from very different backgrounds that took part in this morning's meeting. It shows that the work we are doing is not driven by partisan interests, but by a general interest. The objective obviously requires an effort that involves different areas: the diplomatic one, the security one, also the humanitarian one. If we think of the seafarers who are stranded in the Gulf, and if we think of the nations directly impacted by the crisis, in all these areas, Italy is ready to play its part. Obviously, everyone's attention is focused above all on the naval presence in Hormuz, an essential aspect for several reasons, for concrete needs, such as mine clearance in the stretch of sea around Hormuz, and more generally, as was recalled, to reassure the maritime industry, to provide a security framework for ships transiting the strait. But it is clear that an international naval presence in Hormuz can only be launched when there is a cessation of hostilities, in coordination with all regional and international actors, and with an exclusively defensive posture. It seems to me that there was full agreement on this morning as well. We are carrying out an important planning action at the national level. Italy offers, within the framework I have just outlined, its willingness to make its own naval units available, clearly on the basis of a necessary parliamentary authorization according to our constitutional rules. But it is a commitment in line with the work we have already done for the defense of freedom of navigation. I recall Atalanta, therefore the European operations, and particularly Aspides, which boasts an important presence in an area adjacent to that of Hormuz, and from my point of view, it can represent a precious experience also for what we are trying to do now. So, it was a very productive discussion. It shows how Europe is ready to play its part in the framework of international security, together with its partners, of course, and it is an initiative that fits into a broader effort that we continue to carry forward, which sees our nations constantly engaged. Faced with a cycle of conflict that now constantly recurs, and which therefore involves not only the Middle East, but Ukraine and many others, which we are now used to facing. For our part, we will do everything possible to help consolidate both the ceasefire in Lebanon, which is very precious, also obtained with the mediation of the United States, as well as the prospect of a resumption of negotiations to put an end to the conflict in Iran. In short, clearly the open fronts are many, but we will not give up on building just, lasting and pragmatic solutions with determination and patience, as Italy tries to do every day. Thank you very much, Emmanuel. Thank you.
Dear Emmanuel Macron, dear Keir, but let me also first say from my side that I am very grateful that the French President and the Prime Minister of Great Britain have invited us to this conference here in Paris today. And I am grateful that Giorgia Meloni and I were also able to participate in person on behalf of Italy and the Federal Republic of Germany. Today we have seen a very high level of agreement among all those who participated in the video conference and in person here in Paris. Frankly, it also surprised me a little how strong the agreement was in assessing the situation and how clear and unanimous the conclusions drawn from it by all participants were, because this war against Iran presents us with major challenges. We all want the Near and Middle East to return to peace and stability as quickly as possible. We all have a great interest in this. The exploding energy prices must fall again as quickly as possible, and this war must not become a transatlantic stress test. In this respect, it is now necessary to draw some conclusions together, because the challenges I have just described affect us all in all the member states of the European Union. Furthermore, across the whole of Europe. And if what we have set out to do fails, then we face the threat of a major multidimensional global crisis. And let me add at this point, I take very seriously what was expressed in Washington over the weekend during the annual meeting of the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, also with regard to developments in the capital markets. And in this respect, we all have a very high interest in stepping up our efforts now, and also drawing the necessary conclusions from this. From my perspective, there are three. From the perspective of the federal government of the Federal Republic of Germany, we support the ongoing efforts for a swift diplomatic agreement between the United States and Iran. We, for our part, are also holding talks with all actors. After many months of silence, Germany is also holding talks with Tehran. We want to help achieve a lasting end to this war as quickly as possible. Our message, also in coordination with all our partners, is that Iran must end its nuclear program. It must stop attacking Israel and the Gulf states, and it must reopen the Strait of Hormuz reliably, permanently, and without payments of any kind for free shipping traffic. It is good news that we received during the ongoing talks today. But this must be organized in complete accordance with international maritime law so that there are absolutely no restrictions. Merchant ships and their crews must have unimpeded passage through the Strait of Hormuz. Secondly, we welcome the start of direct peace talks between Israel and Lebanon. This is a historic opportunity that these two countries now have in their neighborhood. And it must be clear, Hezbollah must lay down its weapons and must no longer attack Israel. But Israel, for its part, must now also make a contribution to lasting peace. I have also spoken on the phone again with Prime Minister Netanyahu in recent days. I also want to take this opportunity to thank the United States for the efforts they have evidently successfully made to achieve a ceasefire here. Finally, thirdly, also looking ahead to the conference next week in London. We are prepared to make a German contribution to securing free navigation in the Strait of Hormuz. After the end of combat operations, this could include a deployment of the Bundeswehr within the framework of an international operation. As soon as there is a secure legal basis for this, for example in the form of a Security Council resolution. For this, I need a decision by the federal government in Germany, a mandate from the German Bundestag, and a viable military concept. In our view, such participation could consist of mine clearance and maritime reconnaissance. We can do that. We will therefore participate in the further military planning talks taking place, and if possible, we would also like to see the participation of the United States of America. From our perspective, it would be desirable. The federal government will therefore advance the work on a corresponding Security Council resolution, together with partners wherever possible. Finally, the ceasefire between the United States and Iran, which has been holding for several days, is an important step forward. We want to do our part with great commitment so that we can succeed in restoring lasting peace in the region in the coming days. Thank you very much.